Hi, this is David with David's Tutorials, and I'm sitting here in Oklahoma with my granddaughter Phoebe.
Hi.
Yeah, and I am going to tell Phoebe a story about flying an airplane. Now, this was even before your mommy was born. This was probably about early 1972, maybe even late 1971. Wow. And that was even before Grandma graduated from high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. But I was stationed at McCoy Air Force Base in Orlando, and I was a brand new co-pilot, meaning the assistant pilot sitting in the right seat, not the left seat, in a KC-135 as an air-to-air refueling aircraft. And that's made on the civilian version of that airplane was a Boeing 707. It was a 4-engine jet plane. It's a big one. And I learned a lot about it when I went to tanker school. And I had just gotten out of tanker school and had gotten assigned to McCoy Air Force Base. And they sent us on a TDY. TDY is military talk for temporary duty. Military loves to use acronyms, letters in place of words, because sometimes the words give you a great big mouthful, and you don't want to say that whole mouthful every time, so you just say the letters. TDY. That's easier to say than temporary duty. They sent us to Alaska.
Oh, wow.
And Alaska, it was really neat. We got to fly to it was Eielson Air Force Base in Fairbanks, Alaska. Now, if you look at a map of Alaska, it's like a great big rectangle with lumps sticking out of it and a tail on it. Fairbanks is right in the middle of that great big rectangle.
Wow.
So, now, do you know how big Alaska is? It used to be, before Alaska became a state, that Texas was the biggest state in the Union. They were always really proud of being the biggest state in the Union. Well, here comes Alaska, and it's about twice as big as Texas.
Oh, wow.
But it has very few people in it. It's not populated like Texas is. But it's a giant state, and so where it would take us in a tanker about maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour to fly all the way across Texas, it would take us several hours to fly across Alaska.
Oh, wow.
So we were flying from Orlando, Florida, all the way up to Alaska, and that's diagonally across the United States. And, it was a long way. It was about a 5 or 6 hour flight. That wasn't too bad for us, because we could fly a long time, because it was a tanker aircraft. They had a lot of fuel on board. And matter of fact, I have flown a tanker aircraft for 18 hours before.
Wow.
Yeah, that was an interesting flight. But that's a totally different story. Well, we went to Alaska. Now, do you know anything about compasses and how they work?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about a compass.
Well, there's a red arrow, and it always points to north.
That's correct. And why does it point to the north?
I don't really know why.
Okay, that's fine. It points to the north because the world has magnetic poles. Now, that means people discovered this years ago, probably back in the 1500s or 1600s, that if you got a lodestone, which was a natural magnet, and you got a piece of metal that was magnetic and you rubbed it on there, it would magnetize that piece of metal. And if you had that piece of metal float in water, it would always turn and point to the north, because the magnet in the metal would be attracted to the magnetic North Pole.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty neat. But the interesting thing is, if the Earth is a great big ball, that's true, the North Pole is, when the Earth rotates, it rotates around the North Pole. Well, the magnetic North Pole is not right at the geographic North Pole. It's off a little bit. And so the closer you get up to the magnetic North Pole, the less reliable a magnetic compass becomes. Because if you want to know where real North Pole is, it's not going to point there. It's going to point to the magnetic pole. And if the real North Pole is here and the magnetic pole is here, and you want to fly to the North Pole, your magnetic compass is going to point to the magnetic North Pole. Well, in the tanker, we had a crew of 4 people. We had a pilot, and we had a co-pilot, and we had a boom operator who operated the little nozzle that refueled other airplanes, and we also had a navigator. Now, the navigator back in these were the days before computers. They had to get out their sextant and their telescope, their sight, and they'd stick the sextant up through a hole in the top of the aircraft and sight on a star, sight on the moon, sight on the sun, and figure out where we were that way. And that was why we needed a navigator, because we were flying in places where there weren't any radio beacons to tell us where we were. Up near the North Pole, there are very few radio stations to tell us where we were. So the navigator, it was very important for the navigator to learn how to navigate, especially near the North Pole, because the magnetic compass is not good near the North Pole. We know that now, right? Yeah. Okay. So what the navigator does, when we went up to Alaska, some of the missions we flew were training missions for the navigator to have him practice and teach himself and teach another navigator, how do you navigate when you're near the pole? And the way they did that, I'm not going to get into any of the details, but they basically took a map and they overlaid a grid on it that was different than the latitude and longitude, and we flew grid navigation up near the North Pole. And they would practice that. Well, we had a flight one time where we took off from Eielson Air Force Base. Now, Eielson Air Force Base had a long runway, and we were going to go up and refuel some B-52s that were flying. This was back in the Cold War when the United States and the Soviet Union were always growling at each other and trying to say, we're stronger than you are, and you better not attack us because we'll retaliate and make you really sorry. And so the part of doing that was the B-52s were flying around up there. Well, if you attack us, we've got these B-52s. They're going to go take care of you guys. And so that was part of the mission. But then after we refueled the B-52s who were flying in orbit somewhere up there, we did the navigation mission. And the navigator was doing his training flying around the North Pole so that he could basically learn how to do it and hone his skills, get better at it. Well, we were flying up there, and it was nighttime. And it was beautiful. Clouds at all up there. And I could look up out of the cockpit windows and just see all these bright stars that I'd never seen before. And yes, we did get to see some of the northern lights. The northern lights are basically when there's ionized radiation that comes in from the sun, and it's attracted to the North and the South Pole, and it comes into the Earth there. And as the ionizing radiation comes in through the Earth's atmosphere, it lights up. And those are the northern lights. And it's just beautiful. But as we were flying up there on this nighttime training mission, polar training mission, the navigator says, okay, pilot, maintain this heading for 3 minutes and then start a standard rate right turn. Now, a standard rate right turn means that you go into about 30 degrees of bank. It depends on the altitude. It could be like between 28 degrees of bank or 32 degrees of bank or something. But there is an instrument in the cockpit that tells you when you're doing a standard rate turn. And a standard rate turn basically makes you do a full 360 degree circle in 4 minutes. Okay? And so he said, all right, get ready to start your turn. Ready, now. And we rolled into this, let's just say it was a 30 degree bank turn, and we flew, and navigator said, okay, just maintain this bank angle, maintain, and 4 minutes later he says, okay, you can roll out now. And we rolled out, and the navigator said to us, crew, we just flew around the North Pole. We flew around the world in 4 minutes.
What?
Well, people, the grid lines on the Earth, if you've seen a globe, they've got, I believe it is latitude that goes from the North Pole to the South Pole, and then longitude that goes around. No, it's the other way. Longitude from the North Pole to the South Pole. I keep getting them mixed up. And latitude that goes around. But as you get closer to the pole, the lines of latitude keep getting closer and closer together until they meet at the North Pole. So if you fly through all of the degrees of latitude, you've flown around the world.
Wow.
So in that mission, we were able to fly around the world in 4 minutes. Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
And I was a brand new co-pilot at the time, and I'm just taking it all in and sitting there wide-eyed and, wow, this is so cool. And let me tell you a little bit more about that trip. up to Alaska. It was very interesting. We were there in April, and they were having I forget the name of the contest. It was a raffle. But what they had, the Fairbanks River went right down through the middle of downtown Fairbanks, Alaska. And there was a bridge over it. And what they did, the people in the city who lived there, can you imagine living in the middle of Alaska all year long? But they lived there. They went, about 500 yards up the river, and they planted a flag in the ice. And then they sold raffle tickets to raise money for the city, betting who got the closest time when that flag, when the ice breaks up, when the flag would go under the bridge.
Wow.
And they had rules for that. But the ice was just starting to break up while I was there in April. Just, no way was the flag anywhere near to going under the bridge. But that was one of the fun things they had. And while I was there, several of the other KC-135 crew members who were up there with me in different airplanes, they went out fishing. And they caught a whole big mess of fish in the river, a different river that had broken up. And the fish they caught was called grayling. And I had never heard of grayling before, but obviously it's something very prevalent up there in central Alaska. And they brought it back, and they brought it to the officers club, and they persuaded the officers club chef to cook up their grayling. And so we had a meal of the grayling that our crew members had caught. And that was just kind of fun. And I went out walking in the woods while I was there, and I wasn't flying, of course. And one time I went out there, and it was kind of dense, and I wasn't all that comfortable. And I heard a noise, and I looked, and about 20 yards away from me, on the other side of a bunch of trees, I could look over there. There was a wild moose. And I had heard all the stories about how dangerous moose are, and I'm thinking, I think I'm going to head on back right about now. So I just kind of turned around and went back to where I had come from, and I just didn't want... The moose was safely on the other side of a big batch of trees, a copse of trees, and I just didn't want that moose thinking that I was trying to interfere in any way.
Yeah.
So that was another story about what happened while I was up there in Alaska, but it was a fun trip. And so that was just something I wanted to share with you and share with the people out there in David's Tutorials vlog land. And I hope that you enjoyed the story.
I really did.
And I hope the people out there enjoyed hearing the story and meeting my granddaughter Phoebe right here in Oklahoma. And I am just so delighted. And I got to tell you something. I am so proud of Phoebe and her two sisters. They are just growing up to be the most wonderful young ladies. So I'm just going to tell you that right here so the whole world can tell it. So anyway, that's all I've got. Thanks so much for watching. If you thought this was a great video, give us that thumbs up. That way I'll know, and the YouTube robots will know that you enjoyed the video, and they'll want to recommend it to other people. And leave us a comment in the comment section. Let us know what you thought of this video. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much. I appreciate every single person subscribed to this channel. And if you're not, why not go ahead right now and click that subscribe button and then the bell icon, and YouTube will let you know by email whenever we post another video right here on David's Tutorials. Meantime, take care, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Bye.